Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exit interview, one of our last ones that we have here. We are joined with the second place finisher, Maddie,
Woo!
a lot later than we saw you the last time. So, congratulations on that.
Oh my goodness, thank goodness, right?
Yeah, right? And I am
Very different.
joined by one of my co-hosts, Alex Trias. He's here with me. And we don't have Lily today, but we have Maddie's Sahara Dune sister, Kylie
Yeah,
Scruggs, here to ask her some juicy questions.
surprise, surprise.
Before we get into Kylie's questions, I have some questions about the marooning, and then we can kind of go into gameplay. So
Mhm.
you get on the call, and there's Danny from your season. He's the only one from your season. What were your thoughts on just initially seeing him happy, excited? Oh, I hate that guy, whatever.
Um, my initial thoughts were, oh shoot. I did not connect with Danny in the game too much or after the game when we did Sahara Dunes. He was one of very few people I did not connect with after the game. And seeing him there, I was like a little bit cautious. Oh shoot, not an immediate connection, but potential. And so I did think there was an opportunity there. And I did start to pursue it right away in terms of getting in tight with Danny as a duo, but also a trio with Simmons. Little did I know that everyone else would think we were very, 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 very tight, despite not being tight coming into the game. So hilarious for me. But yeah, I definitely saw it as potential, but didn't expect him to be the one sitting there.
Mhm. And then what were your thoughts on some other people that you might have either seen in recaps or in episodes of DCP sitting there like, ooh, I want to be on a tribe with them. Like you connected a lot with Britley. Did you know she had gone to Rocks like you before you had met with her? What were your kind of initial thoughts on some people at the Marooning?
I my first thoughts when I saw the names of the people was, wow, we are here to play. And this is a big group of all-stars, an exciting group of all-stars. I may not have known people's games specifically, but I have been around DCP enough to know names and to know some moments from games. So there was some familiarity of names in the room. And as everyone's names are being read out, I was just trying to jot down who was in what seasons as quick as possible, which I think was part of the reason I started pushing Trinity Falls as a threat on our tribe right away, just knowing how dynamic their game was and how fast paced it was. Um, but yeah, definitely here to play, huge group of big players, as we'd call them. 18 big players is what I felt when I saw everyone in the room.
Yeah. All right, Kylie, take it away.
All right, time for me to crack into it. Let's
There
go.
we go. There's Lily.
Okay. So before we like really get started on your game, now I call you my Sahara sister, but you're actually an actual sister to a production member. So starting on this season, what did the Millsip name feel to you? Like in terms of just previous games, being a production member, all that. Like what did you feel coming into it? I felt like it would communicate to others that I was here to play. I know that people who have come in contact with my brother in games or in the DCP community knows that he is there 100%. He's great at puzzles. He makes moves and isn't afraid of it. And so I knew that that was probably some sort of perception that would come into play for me with us being siblings. And I didn't know it at the beginning, but I do think later on I started to realize that maybe I could position myself as a little honorary exile boy in some in some of the conversations and in some of the votes. So I do think that because some people were familiar with John, it gave us at least a starting point to talk about. It gave us some things to laugh about too, and to joke about, which was really helpful to break tension in conversations. So it was nice to have that as a springboard to more conversation for us.
Before we continue forward, I checked all the questions. The question is not there, so I feel like this is also the perfect time for me to put it in here.
All right.
Now having your full experience in All Stars, we can talk openly about how the game happened. Like you got to the end. In terms of DCP, who is the better Milsip player?
Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh, oh. I was gonna say like in the rankings, me, but in their hearts, John. But
no, it's definitely Matt. In like all of our hearts, it's all of our hearts and heads. I am going to say this on record. Come at me, John.
I'm not sure. I think we'll need to have a vote, but I did hear some gentlemen on the finale call last night saying that they would pay good money for Blood First Water. And then maybe that's where we really see it.
All right, we're gonna put a poll on our Instagram after this goes live of who's the better Milsip, Maddie or John, and the audience will decide.
Excellent. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging me.
Good question. Good question. All right. So another kind of like pre-game situation. You were the only player coming in that was a pre-merger that went out in their previous game. Did you have any feelings about that coming in and seeing all the rest of the cast?
All the feelings. I don't think I realized it at first until Andrew and I were having a conversation one day and he told me I was the only pre-merger. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I am. I think it was probably the like high stakes it created was probably less to do with my placement in the previous game. It was probably more to do with the fact of, and I think other people can probably feel this too, of like just prod believing in you. And so like, you know, when someone doesn't believe in you, it's easy to come into something and say like, oh, I'm just going to prove them wrong. I'm going to crush it. It doesn't matter. But it's a whole different feeling and a whole different level of stakes when you come into something and you're like, wow, the people that have put me here really believe in me for some reason and I can't quite see it yet. And now like there's these 10 days ahead of me and like I am going to need to find a way to prove them right. Sometimes proving people right is so much scarier than proving them wrong. And so, yeah, it felt very high pressure, especially with my placement previously, but mostly because of all of your belief in me in the game. So thanks.
Yeah, we filmed our production draft before the game had started, and you were a name that was barely on the table because you were gone like that. So it is a testament to your potential that you gave off in about 4 hours of gameplay, and your first vote was barely a vote. So like you did show a lot of potential moving forward in another game. So you definitely
I think I have, yeah, I haven't like touched Sahara Dunes since like right after it happened until like 2 weeks ago maybe. And I like looked back at some of it, at some of my gameplay, and I think it gave me, now having been in a longer format game, like a little bit more appreciation for what was going on there and how hard I was playing. And I just don't think it registered at the time. So yeah, now looking back at it, I can like see a little bit more than maybe I saw previously, just because more experience and understanding of the game.
Yeah, that's sweet. Well, you made us all proud.
Oh, and you got the premiere episode title of Sahara Dunes. So
Right. What was it?
It was really so easy or something like that. It
was her roasting Matt DC's challenge performance.
A good mean Maddie moment. Sorry.
That's so funny. All right, I got one more question that's like pre like pre-swap, pre-merge, all that. We already talked about Danny and your connection with him, but was there anyone else on your starting tribe that you felt good about, or like any relationships that right off the bat you were like, okay, this is where I want to be?
Well, yeah, that one guy. um, but seriously, there was like a few that I felt pretty connected to right away. So,
Like,
Danny.
let's get the origin of Simmons because I don't think we got that in the
All
episode
right.
enough. So let's get the origin story here.
The origin story is this: Simmons headed on into my DMs and said, "Hey," with a little wave. We exchanged a few jokes, and then him and I actually ended up on a call the very first night. And I actually felt like he was like sharing a lot with me right away. And I was like, I didn't, for context, knew nothing about his Exile game, which I'm glad about because it allowed me to just like sense and feel in the moment versus like, you know, someone doing so well in their previous game can either like make you really nervous and make you not want to work with them, or it can make you work with them, and just it comes in with a lot of preconceived notions that I'm just happy I didn't have. But he came on really, really strong, shared a lot of information with me right away, and was pretty open and honest. And I got off the call and I was like, whoa, what was that? Where's this going? And so I just kind of let it simmer for a little bit and see if he would keep coming to me over the next day or so. And he did. And so I felt like it was really genuine. We talked a lot via message in the first few days, a few little chats here and there that you don't see, probably mostly because we forgot to record them. But where I think our relationship actually took a really different turn was after the Danny vote. I think like when you have someone that you really wanted to work with and then they do something that like tests whether or not you think you can work with them, there's like one of two things. You either like move away from it and decide that's not for me, or you like lean in, dig in, and say, all right, we're going to get past this because we've had to have some like real conversations really early in this game. We're like a bit more open and we've like had to struggle through that. And it just made our relationship a lot deeper, a lot quicker than maybe some other people's. And I think like when you watch it, it can look like a betrayal, but I think there's like a difference between betrayal and blindside. One is like with the intention to hurt, and then the other is a like respectable game move that would have been cool if I was in the loop on, but didn't really hurt me. And in this case, actually like really very much helped my game. Yeah, I think when you get pegged as a duo, somebody has to go. Like someone's gonna have to go, and like better it happens quick and it's not you, then like you get sticky there. So yeah, that's the Simmons origin story. And then I was also Danny, of course, and then really trying to build a relationship with Britley. And I knew she was close to Mike. So that's where I started building my relationship with Mike, which obviously came into play a little bit later in a really substantial way.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments was just like, so you want to tell me something?
Yeah.
And he's
well,
just like,
you know what? Like, I am like not afraid of sitting and waiting for people to speak to me. I like, if you create the space, people need to fill it. And I will like sit in that awkward silence. And I felt that would be the best way to like get some type of authentic response from him. And I know he was like lying to me a lot in that, but at least it was not like this smooth talking, fully crafted response, because I actually think that would have been more detrimental to our relationship, because it would have felt like a really big play versus something he just needed to do because he was in a tough spot between the two sides he was playing at that moment.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so one hurdle that you and Simmons had to get through was your flip cup skills. So do you have like any thoughts on playing flip cup? Like were you prepared coming into it, or just any game like that? Like did you think that there was going to be any like party games that you would have challenges for that maybe you weren't as prepared for?
Listen, I just didn't think it was that hard. And I don't think it's that hard for most people. What I actually found most difficult through the whole game, which I just didn't know about myself, like I'm very much an athlete, very much competitive, competed a lot, but I've never had to like compete with things like with your hands. And I was so nervous in so many games. And like my hand is like shaking. And so I'm like popping up the cup like an idiot. And it's just like my hands have like taken on minds of their own, and they're all different minds and they're not working together. And so I anticipated that would be a challenge for sure. I just didn't anticipate I would be so garbage at it. So otherwise I would have practiced.
It's so funny because you said, like, we talked about the first challenge of Sahara Dunes being so easy. It's like some people think Flip Cup is so easy, but it is not.
I know.
Take back your confessional now.
I know. Sorry, Matt.
No, he deserved it.
No. I'm just kidding. I also am bad at Flip Cup, so that's why I was curious. Because I remember
all right, so Kylie's our lovely challenge tester for videos, and I'm the one who has to sit through that with her and trying to get her to get one in Extreme Flip Cup is a lot. So it was a lot of time.
Extreme. Anyway, I just wanted to ask because I on that. Okay, so we get to Sarah, so that's at the swap, right? So that was a vote out that you talked a lot about having a fear of the boys like making you look like a fool. So you mentioned maybe being an exile boy in some capacity. If you hadn't felt that way about Sarah, do you think that would have changed things, or would you have tried to save her in some way?
Sorry, if I hadn't felt what way about Sarah?
Well, felt that way about yourself during the vote of Sarah, like when she was there. Like if you hadn't felt like the boys were gonna maybe make you look like a fool, would you have tried to save Sarah to work with you?
If I thought they were gonna, no, because if I thought that Simmons and Austin were deeply playing me in that moment, because that's what was being fed to me by very smart Mike Rick, I would have tried to work with Mike to move to the merge with Mike. But we had already decided in that moment that we were not going to use his extra vote or do anything in the first vote. So I still believe Sarah would have gone at that vote, because there's a world where Austin, Simmons, myself, and Mike, even if Mike was trying to like pull me and work with me closer, there's a world where we won that Friday challenge. So if we, there's secrets under the surface and things have been shared and we're a little bit split, but we didn't need to cause any like ruckus or create any tension at that moment. True. Especially if we were going to win, or if we had the potential to win on Friday, because then there would still be, even though Mike had told me stuff, still be like illusion that we were a 4, at least to get us a little bit further into merge. So I still think Sarah would have gone there based on how Mike and I were playing it out on our side and what we would ideally want to do if we were going to make a move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And to be clear, it had nothing to do with the concert that you both just happened to attend but never met at.
Oh my gosh, I like messaged the guys right away and I said, look, this is what it is. I don't know what she's going to tell you, but I just want you to know we've never met. And you know what they said? We think you've met her. We think you're friends with her. And I'm like, I'm just telling you so you know, so I don't get caught in this. Yeah, honesty is my best policy. And I think it just like amped up the paranoia a little bit within our group.
At a concert.
Pardon me?
Like, what connections would you even made at a concert?
Yeah, exactly. True.
It's all it takes is like an evening together or something like that, and then you can work with each other in this game. It's just
True.
like you need a fraction more than everybody else has, and that's like it could truly make a difference.
True. Cool. All right. Well, moving on to the merge. What were your thoughts with the big Kylie versus Lex fight and how you were potentially going to be the merge boot and then escaped that?
Yeah, I was like, let's do it. I was like, thank you very much. This is great. When we were coming into merge, we knew like merge night that it was like a pretty dire situation. And I would say, besides the night where I was trying to decide what to do between Mike and Simmons, like the merge night was like the other like lowest moment of the game, just because you get in a position and you feel a bit like helpless, hopeless, and you're like, how are we possibly going to get through this? And so we just kind of, the three of us, split up, divide and conquer. Yes, to understand or to see what was going on, but also just so that someone in our group would hear if there was anything coming up. And of course, you see it back. That's Simmons. He ends up being in the conversation with Kylie and Zucker and Karen and Andrew. And when, you know, there's like these moments where they're like, don't tell Maddie. And I am like very certain that like the next message he sent was, Maddie, I've got something. Because I distinctly remember that morning, and it was like this big beacon of light shone upon us, and we were like ready to go. And at that point, it really became less about us trying to figure out like how to maneuver and how to suggest who should go, and, you know, just being restrained and understanding that we needed to just kind of fade into the background a little bit, which feels really like not playing, but in some moments it's truly what you need to do, is to stay out of the limelight. And I knew that my name was out there. Simmons and I had a little code through the mini. So
another code,
but this was not numbers. It was not auditory. I just said to him the night before that like the mini would be so fast that him and I wouldn't get to talk. And that was like really nerve wracking for me, because wanted to make sure just at the very least that we were on the same page, whichever way things were going. And so our code going into the mini was this is yes, and then this is no, and then if you're in danger, this is it. Like the other person would sit back. It's like if you had heard their name. And let me tell you, those first 2 rounds, like Simmons is like popping off the danger zone, and I am like freaking out, but trusting that the relationships we built and just us being able to be in different rooms would just help us get through that. And so thank you, Kylie. Thank you, Lex, for giving us that big beacon of light.
and I will say, like, as much as they all attacked each other and like they did it to themselves, like the work that Simmons and you did, like especially you being West Coast and you having the time to have these calls with both Kylie and, because you have a call with Kylie and you have a call with Lex. Lex essentially gives you everything. We know that.
What? It was so tricky though, because I was like, is this everything? Like it was so unbelievable. So I just like wrote it down, kept it there, saw what threes he had called out, and we like used them later. But I tell you, in that moment, I was like, there's no way he just told me everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like we are all going to bed as well, almost all of us as Pride, we're going to bed, and based off all the communication, it's either you or Austin Moorhead that are going in the first round. But like the first thing I see when I wake up, because everyone's like, oh, you need to check all the messages, I see a message between Kylie and Karen, because Kylie had a call with you, and Kylie and Karen were talking. Karen's like, I want to protect, if I can protect any one of the three, I want to protect Simmons, Maddie or Austin. If we have to let them go, we can let them go. Like she was on board with the plan because it helps her. Kylie comes immediately after your call going, we need Maddie on our side. We can't let Maddie go. We need to push forward with this Lex plan. So whatever you said in that conversation, and I would like to know a little more of like, what happened in that call between you two that really, what you believe, helped push Kylie even more towards this path of, no, let's not go easy. Let's go full war with Lex right now.
Yeah, it was a really interesting call because I felt like Kylie didn't give me much and it made me really nervous. It felt like she was withholding a huge amount of information. And so what I just leaned into in that call was just talking about, you know, how Mike had exited and, you know, how he was playing the game and that I just surfaced it. And up until that moment, like when I was in that call with her, I didn't actually know how close they were. But it became apparent in that call. And I meant it sincerely, very much sincerely. But I said, you know, I like apologized for knocking Mike out and basically said, you know, I know it's going to be a big, big hole that it leaves because you were excited to like work with him and play with him. But maybe if I can fill even a fraction of that hole, that's something I'd like love to do. And in all fairness as well, when I was, because I did sleep like maybe 2, 3 hours that night and it was still on me before I went to bed. When I was thinking, what am I going to do when I wake up tomorrow? It was going to be to go to Kylie because that's where I felt like.
You had this call at night.
Yeah, we had that call at night. Yeah.
Lex too, or was Lex the next morning?
Lex was in the deep, dark bowels of nighttime in PST.
Oh, because you're both West Coast, so you have time.
That's right. That's right. And I also had a call with Ashley, a really great call with Ashley that night as well. But other than that, no other calls with anyone. I felt like people exchanged a few messages with me. And then I think as soon as people knew or people assumed that the vote was going to land on me, it was a bit radio silence.
So what time did you wake up to chaos in the morning?
What time did we start? What time would we have started?
7:30 for you.
Maybe like 6-ish.
So
like it was chaos. And you see, like in those first confessionals, I'm like right out of the shower, just trying to like not be dirty. And I'm like, because I like thought I could do that when I woke up, but there was so much chaos happening that I was like, nope, that's going to be 5 minutes before we go. Yeah. So I woke up like, and it was all blown up when I woke up, which was it was like Christmas morning.
That is so wild. I bet you were so tired.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I've done a lot of things that stretch across multiple days with lack of sleep, but this like takes the cake for intensity. I was, you know, like I joke like, oh, at least it's not real Survivor because we get to eat, but you're like so nervous that you can't.
Yes, but we almost killed you.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
When was that? Was that
it was the balloon that almost killed Maddie.
Right.
Our lovely John. I think it falls on us first with the applications. We did not ask about medical issues because
we learned a lot this season.
Come up in the past. But then your loving brother who got you the supplies just forgot about your latex allergy. So we didn't know until you opened up the box and we're like, all right, well, let's see if Maddie makes it to this challenge. Let's see if Maddie moves on from the first 2 stages of this challenge. And that morning, John, Marshall, and I are trying to finagle a way for you to blow up this balloon. And John's like, does some sort of like pipe work? And I'm like, as long as the balloon attaches to the pipe, we're good.
That was wild because like all of us, we were just like, oh, like she's gonna hear what the challenge is based off like her positioning.
I knew she was not dropping out of it.
In my head, I was like, oh, just drop out. It's fine. Just flop the first part of the challenge.
I will never drop out of a challenge. And like I know that some people misinterpreted my sarcasm in some of my confessionals, but I never threw a challenge.
I heard that and I was like, Maddie was not throwing a challenge.
I think it's hilarious that my full try looked like I was throwing it. because that was the beer pong one, the like other party game.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah.
I
But
also
knowing what I know now, I would not be able to do the balloon one, because I like inhaled latex and I actually like felt it in my chest after. So that'd be a no go for me next time.
I almost thought what you would do is like move on to the third part, fine, but then that blocks someone from going to the third. You could have just sat there in the third. So then you are then putting the Austins to win. Or like if you wanted to make sure your alliance stayed with something, bring in Simmons, whatever, what have you. So I thought that could have been an option for you because you're still using it strategically.
Yeah, it could have been an
like,
option.
I'm not gonna compete.
And much to probably his dismay, I would not have said, Simmons, can you play for me? It would have probably definitely just blocking anyone else.
What? Oh, and also, was there? And maybe I missed it while you're talking here, but was there more motivation to not picking Simmons? Because like in my head, once you said Austin, I felt like part of it was like, okay, you picked an obvious ally, like they would get it, but you also left someone vulnerable who would be a bigger threat in the case that none of you won. Like, was that part of your motivation to not picking Simmons to move forward with you?
I still wanted there to be a question about like, yeah, there's a 3 for sure. They're like voting together, but I still wanted there to be a question about just how tight me and Simmons were. And I felt like it was really important because that was fairly early on in the day. And I feel like there were a lot of small moments like that, whether it be on my side for things like that, or whether it be on Simmons' side when they were telling him they're going to vote Maddie. And he's like, I'll vote Maddie. We did a lot to make it seem like maybe it was him and Austin who were even tighter, and try to make it seem like I was a bit looser in the 3. And I think it was really important, especially as we got to the end of day 2 mini and day 1 mini and into day 2, because as we see it playing back, I definitely believe like the Exile boys thought they were the first layer of that alliance, and I was just hanging out on the outside. And I think that was because of just like those micro moves and decisions that we made along the way, not necessarily to like dispel that we were working together, but just to put a question mark. Sometimes a question mark is all you need.
Maddie, how many texts did I send you of how do they not know during the while editing?
I know. But you know, it's super fascinating because I was thinking like, why did it make the most sense for me to be like so tight with Simmons? And if you saw my previous game, you know that like I'm a pretty like loyal player for sure. Like when I pick
Find
a person,
your one person.
Yeah, when I pick a one person, I am going to like. There's a confessional.
You might go to Rocks for them.
Not this time. I don't think I would have gone to Rocks here. But I know there's this one confessional where I'm sitting there and I'm like, is Simmons 100% with me? I don't know. I don't care, but I'm 100%. So I'm just going to like loyalty the shit out of him until he realizes that I'm the best option. And that was like, that's how I pick my people. But like from a strategic sense, it wasn't just that we like kicked it off in conversations and had really great conversations and could share a lot with each other. It was also very strategic on my side, because when you're like choosing your number 1 in the game, it really matters who you choose. And so like myself, I come off in most conversations like very sweet, quiet, nice, Maddie, but like just below that surface and like the more authentic side of me is like very opinionated, very competitive, very strong-willed. And if I'm in a final 2 or 2-person alliance with someone, they will see that side of me and they'll have to see that side of me for us to work together. And so I needed someone who would match that energy and who would see my energy like that as an asset versus a liability. And I needed someone who like wouldn't be threatened with that degree of competitiveness. Because otherwise I'd be cut way earlier, if at all, but way earlier, I think, if I didn't have someone who was like as competitive as me behind the scenes. So it was very strategic in that way. And I think like when you see a person who like matches that energy, you're like, okay, I think it'll work. And you just go with it.
And I mean, ultimately, it does work because, like, we even get to like the final five where Karen's pretending she has an idol. Like, how much anyone believes it, it's up to all of you. But you see Simmons in confessional, and he's literally going through the mental gymnastics of like, what happens if I place a vote here? What happens if I place a vote here and the idol's real? It's here and it's fake. And he even got to a point where I thought he was going into that confessional saying like, oh, like I would place a vote on Austin and Maddie will go, because like he kept talking about how he would never cut Austin again. And but this time he like swerves and he goes, oh, I would vote Maddie, and then Austin would just go, and that's that's whatever. Like you even see him confirming the work that you're putting in of like I can't do it, because like I think both of you were very loyal to each other. You both also saw in each other the threat that the other was.
Oh yeah.
And it was very Wendell and Dom of like Ghost Island, where it was like, would it have been the right decision to try to cut the other? Maybe. But you don't know how you were going to react in the heat of the moment, because like it's not like you're going to get cut and then you have days to think about it. It's like you get cut, it's raw emotion, and okay, tribal council's in 30 minutes.
Yeah. And I very specifically knew, like, I didn't do a lot of pre-prep joining that club on this All Stars cast, which I'm sure you all know already based on some of my actions. But what I would do is that when I was making really tough decisions around who I wanted to work with, I would do like in the moment research. So I'd go back to their season, I'd look for a video of when they're talking to their alliance, when they're talking to someone they're not working with, and then when they're in confessional. And I would try to use that to help me guide me on like what version of a person was I seeing when they were in conversation with me. And so it helped me just like decipher at least like layers of closeness, like where was I in people's layers. And it helped on a few occasions, and Simmons was one of them. And him and I said the whole way along that we would go to the end. Well, I said it mostly, but he did confirm it. I feel like he did. But
I know, had Andrew gotten to fourth, we don't know what would have happened.
It's all a mystery in a parallel universe. But I was very, very adamant that I would take him to the end under any circumstance, and we would have a fair fight in the end. And I told him that over and over and over again. And I believed it, because he, in his last game, was cut right at the end. So for me to make him believe and to take me and not cut me before I cut him, I need to believe it, that was my intention in the game, because if I didn't, he would sniff that out for sure. So if I wasn't sitting there believing it every single day, then I think he would have read it and would have cut me for sure. Just to like hedge his own bets. And maybe those last couple rounds would have been a bit harder for him, but he would probably rather do that than have someone cut him at the end again, knowing his last game.
Yeah. And speaking of your loyalty with him, like, walk us through the thought process of working with him on the advantage that you got during Extreme Flip Cup. And if kind of like what came into play, because I also was thinking when you're talking about those signals that y'all had going into the mini days, like I think his experience in long game, your experience in the mini, going into that, like prepared y'all with that. But then also I was wondering if that your experience with the mini also came into play with your decision of having him help you out with that. So just walk us through your thought process of when you kind of talked to him about that.
Yeah, before I shared it with him, and it's hard to tell because of episodes and timing and everything, it felt like I had that advantage with me for like 5-6 hours.
You did.
And yeah, like I had it for a good, you guys were probably like, what is Maddie doing? This is the easiest advantage.
It was never talked about again. It was barely talked about when we had it. You had like a 3-second talk about it I don't think Kylie ever talked about it because you two were the only ones to find it. And then it was like offhandedly thrown in the beginning of the episode after you had found it. And I was like,
Yeah.
this never gets talked about again until Final Six when you and Simmons find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because I still had enough names, right? Because it didn't need all the names of people who had been voted out. I thought it was more complicated than it was. So I was trying to unscramble things because Lex had been voted out, but he wasn't included in the order of vote outs by the time like you get the clue.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I held on to it for 5 to 6 hours. And I said, I am just like, I know that when you get advantages in a mini, they're easier, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're given to you so that you can solve them quick enough for it to be useful in like a round or the next round, because things are moving so quickly. So the other thing with advantages is just like, if it's supposed to be that easy and you're not getting it, you're just missing something. Like, and not necessarily any number of hours, especially when you're that exhausted and like, you're not going to figure it out in most cases. And in addition to that, even though Kylie was the only one who also had the clue, I didn't know that. I was like,
yep.
Somebody else could have this sitting there too and thinking I'm going to solve it tonight after the mini ends. And so I'm
glad you still tried. Like,
yeah,
I'm glad you still tried to get the advantage.
What if we went home and first round the next day, and then I found out we had an end the scramble advantage that we didn't even know or that we knew about? That's like the worst thing. So I shared it with him because I felt like it would. I just felt like it was the right choice. It was like another loyalty coin in the bank. I probably wasn't going to solve it anyways, given how late it was. I needed to work on my FTC speech that night. So I, just kidding. Kind of.
You're not, though. I know you're not.
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. But I just like, we're a team. And at that point, like going into F6, you're still a team. Even if you're planning to cut each other a little bit later, I was playing for us in that moment. I thought it might be like a little bit more of a collaborative solve. I thought he might like throw it my way a little bit, but I should have known better because that was I should have known Simmons better by then. And I thought it was really funny, to be honest. I was really annoyed at first, but I felt like he would play it for us because he needed me to get to the end still. And so I felt like the risk was pretty low that it would like backfire in a ridiculous way. But it was just like another one of those like Simmons punches on my arm, you know, when you have like a friend and they just like, they give you a little boop and you're like, oh, but it's okay because you're still friends. So yeah, that was my decision. Felt right at the time and it worked out. It was probably one of the more risky things I did in the game. It's probably like tops the list for riskiest thing.
So Lily's not here and she loves a hypothetical. So I'm going to give you
a
hypothetical. Say everything stays the same, but you had found it. So Simmons has immunity at Final Six. Do you play the end the scramble at 6 or do you wait to see what happens at 5?
It's really, really tricky because as we know, some people were like pretty close to pulling the trigger on me in that round. So we know that Andrew was okay with writing my name down. And I feel like if I had pulled something like that, like an advantage, I do think someone like Karen would have pulled the trigger on me in that round potentially. I feel like that one, like it's safest to use when you like have immunity. And so the reason it all worked out is because Simmons had it in his hand too, so he could use it. I think I would have held on to it. Yeah.
And seen what happened.
I think I would have gone home. I think I would have gone home with it.
All right. So say it's all hunky-dory. 6, Karen goes. All right, whatever.
Yeah.
Zucker wins immunity at 5. You still have this. Is it the same thing? Because Zucker is immune and not you. Because now you have Andrew in the game instead of Karen. no, hypothetically, you should have the votes because Simmons.
Hypothetically, I should have the votes, but we know that then that would bring Simmons' tough decision around earlier, right? Because then it would be me versus Andrew around earlier.
It's obviously a risk.
I think I play it there. I think I play it there. And this is the reason why I play it there.
So they don't talk.
Because Austin was bought into the order of who we were going to get out. So our order going into that day was Karen, Zucker, Andrew. Simmons was the one having the difficult decision around whether or not he let go of me or let go of Andrew. So if you use the end the scramble there, me and Austin are still aligned on voting Andrew. And I almost think that forces Simmons potentially to vote Andrew as well. Maybe. I'm just trying to do that. Andrew would think we're voting me out. So at the very least,
and Zucker, and
it's a 2-2. Yeah. It's a 2-2, and Austin would go home.
And honestly, Zucker's probably still trying to pitch to Andrew to take out Simmons at that point.
Yeah.
So like you like the votes are gonna be in the air at 5 if you.
Oh yeah, Zucker's there. Sorry, I forgot Zucker.
Yeah.
That's wrong. I'm wrong then.
Well, I mean, Simmons could throw his vote and it'd still be a 2-2. But
That's true. Yeah.
All right. Interesting thoughts.
That's
Thank you.
Because then we also don't know where the idols would be, which you want to know, but still, like.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well.
Let's unpack.
Yeah.
So many hypotheticals.
Too many.
Yeah, that's an interesting one too, because that created such a weird vote regardless that like there's so many other options as to what could have happened. But we haven't talked about all of the post-merge boots, but just in general, outside of Simmons, obviously, and then also Austin, who you worked really close with, who was another person that really impacted your game? You know, whether like positively or negatively, but just someone that you feel like had, outside of those two that we know, like the most impact on getting you to the end.
It could probably even just be like that they were booted in the place that they were, and that helped you. You know.
Post-merge?
Yep.
I think probably one of the biggest ones that helped me was Ashley's exit. I think every round that Karen, Kylie, Ashley were still in the game was very, very dangerous. And I know they weren't like quite close enough yet to be able to say like, we need to stick together, but there's no telling like what round that could have happened or that realization could have happened. And then we get into a pretty gnarly 3-3 fight, scrambling with the people in the middle of those 3-3s. And then it really, really depends who wins immunities and who can sway those middle group. And I feel like it could go either way. So I really think when Ashley left, it made it much easier for us to move through that first day of the mini.
Yeah. I really love that you said Ashley, because we saw her voting confessional, or did we see it? We saw it in the episode, right? Or I can't remember. Okay. Where she was like, Maddie remembered I was booted. Yeah. So like, the two boys kind of just went from Shay straight to Kylie, and I love that you were like, Ashley's boot actually was super impactful for me, and like that I just think that's
and it translates into you getting her vote at the end, because like you gave the most time to her during that merge merge feast time.
Is that like, what we were doing?
Well, Simmons doesn't give her much. Austin really wasn't around that night. And then you acknowledge her during your final tribal questioning. And like sometimes all you need is to let someone like know that you acknowledge them in this game and like knowing that they were there and the influence that they had in it.
And in all fairness, she gave the space for me as well, right? Like I always like, it's really tricky because like communication in this game is like a complete two-way street. It's very seldom that one person's trying really, 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 really hard and then you're getting nothing from the other side. It's usually more balanced. And so everything that I gained from being able to chat with Ashley and understood where her head was at, she did the same for me, and she met me where I was at as well. Like I was pretty open with people that night, like have the chats that you need with East Coasters and I'll be here whenever you want to chat. I will be here. I'm on PST. And she took me up on it. And so I had a really great connection with Ashley, and like through that connection was able to see like, whoa. And through the first couple of rounds of, the Lex Kylie stuff, she was really driving a lot of the conversations. And I said, whoa, that gotta go. We gotta go. Yeah. That's a very influential player, like incredibly influential player, to be able to tell people to get out of a room so that we can make a decision. Like that's like a whole different type of influence. That's amazing.
Yeah, and you could have given Ashley the brief mafia music this time around.
Absolutely.
Right.
But I would definitely say a close second of like a boot that happened for you that I think completely opened up like, okay, the end game's right there. It's like unless a wonky immunity happens, like you're sitting there with exactly how you envisioned it, and that's advantage get in.
Yeah, Andrew.
Advantage get in, we'll get in. You like so
totally.
I sort of want to go. I sort of want to go through it like step by step here, because like
your thought process.
So the scramble is ended. You guys go through tribal council. You go for the motions. We're going about to read the vote, and first you get Karen playing the legacy advantage that Garza gave her by you guys booting him. So either way, you're gonna have someone playing this. So Karen gets it, and you know that you, Simmons, and Austin all voted that way. So like at least half the votes went to Karen. So this is even before Zucker says, "I'm playing my idol." Like what's going through your head? And you're allowed to curse in exit interviews.
But it didn't surprise me necessarily, right? Like it didn't surprise me. I was like, that is a really, like, I can conceptualize that this is happening right now. And in that moment, because you wouldn't have been certain going into that round whether she had anything, she was still a big enough threat to like stick to our guns as we were doing that vote, to like take a shot at her. Like it just made sense. And like I know like people would disagree with that, but every round someone's in is a round closer they get to the end and more things can come out. And so I was like, okay, what's coming next? I really don't know. I didn't know where her vote was going to be. And I thought it might be on me. Because we hadn't connected a lot during the game, which I think is like pretty apparent, like in the cut, like as you watch it back, like it's that communication two-way street thing. Just her and I, like we just couldn't kick it off. And then on both sides, we just like didn't put the effort in to get in each other, to like know each other more. And for me, it was like, okay, I have to like make this, time is really scarce in this game. And so you have to make decisions on where am I going to put this like really limited amount of time that I have. And you can choose to like spend all your time on the upstream battles for building alliances, or you can like kind of move towards the ones where you're feeling flow. And so I'm pretty sure it was probably the same on her side. We just went where the flow was. And so it didn't connect as much as we probably could have in the game. But yeah, that's why I thought at this moment, I thought her vote was going to be on me in this round.
Mm-hmm.
So then I guess once Zucker then says like, oh, I'm going to play Myo too, like you're already in that mindset of like, okay, there's a very good chance I'm walking out here.
Yeah, and I was pretty sure that like Zucker didn't need to play as idol. I was like, oh, interesting. This is going to make it interesting. But I was pretty sure there wouldn't be any votes on him. Not in that round. It felt too early for Zucker to get votes there. But then when I saw my name, like you can see it. Like you can see it in the video. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is how I'm going right here. I like in that moment when my name came up, I like 100% believed I was going home that round.
But then the last vote's revealed, and it says Austin.
Another beacon of light, and I was like post that tribal, I was actually like really confused on how the votes ended up that way.
So were we.
Yeah, I was so confused, and that's why like didn't talk about it in FTC or anything like that, because it wasn't until like later that day that I was like, oh, that's what happened. But I think that was like similar for anyone who voted Karen, probably. You didn't know, right, where the votes went, and nobody talked about it because we were moving so quick. But yeah, when that came up, I was like, I know what happens next and I am safe. And so it was this really low moment of thinking I was gone. And then boom, this really high moment of, wow, we're still here. It's on. Let's do it. And my buddy Austin is safe too. So rock on. Well, not.
Yeah, not. But
not.
And not. I feel like for specifically you and like how your first story ended, to have this be a part of your story of surviving a wheel, and especially the most wacky wheel we've ever had, like the situation is unprecedented in DCP. Like that must have been like sort of like a big weight off your back of like, I've been going through this, I've been making sure there's no wheels. A wheel happens, but you're safe this time.
Oh, felt so glorious to be on the other side of it. Yes. Very glorious.
You conquered the rocks, finally.
I conquered the rocks. Sorry, Andrew. Yeah.
But really cool to be a part of something so crazy and insane like that. So thanks for the thought process, because that was pretty crazy. All right. So aside from that, we've just got the Karen vote and the Zucker vote. But we kind of touched on those already. So moving on to Final Tribal, as someone who has done one before and did not prepare nearly as much as you did and did not do as well, I thought your opening was so incredible. I thought every part of it was just very like well thought out. So as your Sahara sister, I just wanted to like give you there.
I thank you.
Yeah, but watching it back, I was curious, like, was there anything that you heard yourself maybe not say that you wish you had said, or any point that you wish you had maybe spoken on a little bit more, or just general takeaways from watching your Final Tribal back?
I think that with the information I had in that moment and like coming right off the game without having any time to reflect, I think I did the best I had, or the best I could with what I had. In reflection and like looking at some of the things that happened and seeing a couple more things unfold, I think what you sometimes underestimate as a player is like the ripple effect of certain things that you do. And it's really tricky because when you're in that FTC, you want to make sure that every single thing that you say, you are 100% sure that that was your move and you drove it and it's completely honest. Because if there's anything in there that doesn't quite line up with the way that somebody else experienced it, it kind of like brings your whole argument down. So my approach in that moment, knowing that like I wasn't sure if those ripples were mine, I just like stayed to my 100%, and I would like make that decision again. Looking back on it, I think that the things I didn't necessarily know and would have been helpful to be able to say was potentially like the stuff that you talked about, Alex, with Kylie on merge night. I didn't know at the time that it was helping to drive Kylie to fight for me. I also maybe underestimated how locked in Zucker and Andrew were to the Exile boys. And maybe that's because I felt like Austin and Simmons weren't. Mm-hmm. So I think I could have talked about that more as well. Yeah, I think those are two moments that I could have like really like hit home a little bit more, knowing what I know now, but I didn't know it at the time.
Right.
And you can't know everything, so you do the best with what you have. Yeah.
Though Karen doesn't vote for you here, she does bring up a really great point of you can't be Simmons, like beasting everything. You can't be Austin saying the names. And then Simmons points out, I also can't be the one saying the names either. Austin has to be this mouthpiece of saying the names, not saying that Austin was like being told what to say, but it's like for the whole of the three of you, Austin had to be that mouthpiece conveying your three's plans.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was another piece I was very like grateful that Karen shed light on in such like an eloquent way, and Simmons as well, because it was maybe something that I was underestimating in the moment that people were thinking about. I thought it was just like obvious, like my name's out there. I can't speak like that. Like, you know, when you're in the hot seat, if you start spewing other people's names out, it can look really chaotic and just reinforce people's beliefs. And so maybe I underestimated the value of making sure people knew that. So yeah, I was very grateful when both of them brought that to light in the conversation, because it was just another angle that I hadn't said. But I do think it's really interesting that you bring that up, McKenna, like he had to be the person to do that for our alliance. And I do also think it speaks like really well to just the match we had in the three of us, just by chance. Like it's not always the case. And it wasn't planned. It was just that each of us could play a really different role in our alliance, which meant that we ultimately had really differentiated games. And I do believe that that played a role in us each being confident enough to sit beside each other, because we each brought a really, really unique strength to the alliance.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that is all of my questions. So, McKenna and Alex, if y'all have any more, or we can zip on over to Facebook questions.
Yeah, well, I'm also in charge of the Facebook questions, so I'll hold them hostage for a little bit. I just wanted to say like some notes that I had about your final tribal, because like a vote's a vote. I'm gonna be straight up here. The 5-2-1 vote that we have is not an indication of how close this vote actually was. We had probably three and a half of the 5 votes for Simmons came into that voting booth and used their full 10 minutes in there going back and forth into, well, here are the reasons why Maddie should win. Here are the reasons why Simmons should win. Like, I am going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then, like, they just ended up making the call of, like, picking Simmons. Because from my perspective, someone who helps run these final tribals and have been in final tribals, have watched a ton of them, like, you were the most consistent across the entire tribal council. Like, you came in firing, you had a full agenda, it came across very well. I think it took a lot of the jury, like, had to take like a step back and be like, wow, I didn't realize all this. Like, let's listen, like, let's really hear it out. And I think what ultimately just happens is I think that shakes Simmons at first, because you hear him at the beginning and I think his answers are a little shaky. And then towards the second half of Final Tribal, he sort of like gets into this different gear and just like comes right back up to being level with you and your answers. So now it made it back into a race, and like that's how he finished it as strong as you were doing the entire time. But sometimes people remember how you finished and what they had in their heads prior to Final Tribal Council. So I just wanted to commend you for this is only your second game. Your first game you didn't get to experience the Final Tribal at all, and you came in and killed it.
Yeah. Thank you. Give them a show. That's what I wanted. That's the best. Make it tough. Make it really, 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 really tough. That was the goal.
I texted you while I was editing Final Tribal Council being like, I'm still torn. Like, I still don't know how I would have voted. And yeah, I think you did a great job, and for being your first ever of a Final Tribal Council, I think it's great because we point out like Austin was cut so close to the final Tribal Council each time. Simmons was this huge target. This was basically your first game. So which I think is a point that wasn't mentioned enough in Final Tribal Council. Like, Simmons does the whole like, you shouldn't have brought me here. You shouldn't have let me get past that first vote. But at the same time, I think one thing that was missed either from the jury pointing it out or you pointing out, being like, I was barely in a game. I played 4 hours of a game.
I would have even taken that step further. Like, and this is easy to say months later. I would have taken that step further and be like, yeah, my first game, I was only there for a few hours and I got rocked out of the game. I became so valuable for these people that are claiming to be these end game threats that without me, they wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah.
The amount of work that I did to build bonds with all of you to the point where when you guys started shooting at each other, you no longer were looking at us as an option. And a big part of that was the work that I did. Like, but that's so easy to think about with rest. Time to think about this game for months on end. Food. And food. But with all that being said,
plays into like the DCP like historian. Like, some people did not know backgrounds. So
I'd say 16 of the 18 people.
a lot of people kind of knew Simmons's. They knew Austin's. Yeah. But they didn't know yours. And I think that one bump of background information could have also helped as well. But anyway, you were great. Facebook
questions. And the first one is from Kelly.
Right.
I thought you were done.
So for you, Maddie, she says, your social game was so impressive. You seem to have made all the right decisions except maybe one. Was there ever a point you thought about turning on Simmons? And in hindsight, do you wish you had? And if you had, at what round?
The big question.
The big question that everybody wants to know. Can we take a vote? What does everybody think?
maybe we should ask this last to build the suspense.
I read what's on top.
Okay. Let me try to break this down. So the question is, should I have cut Simmons? Is that
basically
that's the basic? If you that's would the
have.
Base of it.
Or and if I would have when?
Yeah.
I truly believed that strategically it made sense for me to take him to the game, and like take him to the end, and before even getting to that, I think like it's a point what you mentioned, Alex, about it being really, really close. And, you know, like there's a world where, a not too far off world, where you could be asking Simmons the exact same question today about him taking me. And I think that we knew that was a risk in taking each other, but strategically it also made sense to take each other and to take Austin and to take our 3, because when you get to a Final Tribal Council, it's really, really about differentiation, right? It's about like who can stand out just more than the other people. So if you bring people who are in your same alliance, and then on top of that, you have the confidence that you can show up really fiery and tribal, because I knew that was how I was going to show up. And I had warned them that was how I was going to show up. And I knew they weren't taking it seriously, or as serious as they could have. For me, it really like, it strategically made sense. And you see that as well, like from Zucker's point of view and his exit interview as well. He says he doesn't want to take me for a very similar reason, right? He says it makes more sense for the Exile Boys to be in the FTC together versus having a wild card who would be able to have a really differentiated story and make it shine away from the others. And that gets you the 1 or 2 votes that you may have in the end. And then personally, I had like made a commitment to those 2. To Simmons, yes, but also Austin. And I played the whole game with so much honesty and so much loyalty. And the thing that you like don't get, you know, there's 2 things you really don't always get in the cut, because like certain things aren't shared because it like makes it obvious like what's going to happen at the end. The first is like the real friendships that you're making. Like I thought that I was going to come out of the game on the other side and there'd be friendships on the other side. What I really underestimated was the friendships I would build like mid-game. Like you're making commitments to these people, you are playing, you're going through some really hard stuff together. It's more than just the strategically right option at the end. It's like, I want to sit beside my friends in this game because we've worked hard. And then that's the other piece of like, you don't always see it because it shows alliances really well, is like all the celebrations that we had along the way together, round after round after round after merge. We were like gobsmacked that we made it through. Like the fact that we got through, it's such a bonding moment. Like we didn't break yet, everyone else broke, we did it, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. And it's such a celebration. And in this game, it's like, I believe at least, it's like way easier to cut people than it is to hold strong and trust each other, because it feels like no one else is going to do that. So when you see yourselves doing that round after round, creates this bond that's really difficult to break. And I think you mentioned it already, like Simmons can't break it either, even though he's like, I kind of don't want to take Maddie to the end, but like the 3 of us together were just so bonded by that point that I wouldn't have. If I would have, the round that it would have made sense to do it was probably at 4 when he didn't win immunity.
And I will say to counter that, because I want to ask during Simmons, because I will probably not be sitting in on Simmons' interview. Simmons' first game, he's chopped right before the end, and that's a big factor of why he does not vote for Lily at the end, because Lily's the one who does
100%.
I think you would have, like, in a world where you could have gotten him out of the game and all else like stayed the same, you get to the end, you and Austin get to the end, you would have needed him to go out in a way similar to how like Karen lost Kylie and Ashley, where it's like he can go, I can't be a part of it. Like,
but then it's not my move, too, right? And somebody else gets that move.
Someone else gets that move, but now you have Simmons on there who knows that you've always been loyal to him, and you now have Andrew coming in, you have Zucker coming in. Like now you suddenly could potentially have 3 banked votes in your corner because you have someone ingratiating a lot of goodwill and speaking on the game that they didn't know you were doing.
Yeah, definitely agree. But maybe I wouldn't have such a great friend after the game.
Aww. For me, I think the only time you cut Simmons is if you replace him with Mike in that vote. Post-merge, I don't see you cutting Simmons at all. Like that, I feel like that's your only opportunity to.
In a way that wouldn't probably blow back on me.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Austin still really liked Mike. You'd still probably have Austin a little bit. You'd have to put some more work in, but
yeah. And it just I wasn't going to do it there.
Yeah. But it's funny you mentioned that, because the next question is from Greg. And for you, Maddie, he says, your game was so impressive and entertaining to watch unfold live and on a rewatch. Your thought process behind every decision was incredibly thorough. How does the game change if you decide to team up with Mike Rick at Swap Fumo to get rid of Simmons or Austin? What was the chance of that ever happening?
0.
But yeah, we can
Oh,
answer 0%.
Because she's already 100% pals with Simmons.
That's right. Let's run through the hypothetical first. So like the way it would have worked, right? So it would have had, we weren't going to make a move that first night, right? The first vote. So Sarah would have gone. Friday, now we have an opportunity to do something if we lose. I'm pretty confident we would have needed to vote Simmons out in that moment. I think that's like what we would have had to do because he would have been too upset if we had targeted Austin. Rightfully so. Like pre-merge playing games like that, totally rightfully so. And then after that, I think it would have been a much harder battle for me to get to the end. So what I would see is like me and Mike would probably be seen a little bit as a duo because whomever's left, so say it's Austin, can say whatever narrative he wants about what had happened. So Austin's in a bit control of the narrative. I had already been in a duo, so I feel like a duo would have caught fire a bit. And but I think we would have like moved over toward the like Kylie, Ashley, Karen side of things. And if I think it was hard to play and communicate the game I played, that was very quiet in an alliance where I was like part of the decision making, that would have been a really tricky alliance to break into and to be influential in, and to then tell that story afterwards. I think it would have been really, really tricky for me to break into it because I think once they pull in Mike there, that gives more time for like Kylie, Ashley, Karen to get a lot closer. They feel a bit more secure because they've got their Mike, who's really close in. They've got more numbers now. He pulls in Maddie, and they all of a sudden have a really big power position in the game, versus like a bit more of the chaos that we observed. Right. So I don't think I would have made it to the end, or if I did, it would have been a lot trickier. And then like the percentage chance it would have happened, I told Mike this too, like he had me like really on the fence that night. Like what you don't see in the cut when like Mike was, sharing the information about the clue to me is that this was like not the first time Mike had been having conversations with me about like what was going on in the Austin Simmons world. So I feel like this was day 2 or 3 of calls with Mike, where Mike was like not even subtly dropping hints. He was like, they're not telling you this. This is the way that they're talking about you behind the scenes over and over and over again. And I had already the night before made a decision to like disregard Mike's information. And then the next day he comes to me with the extra vote, and it all of a sudden gets way, way trickier. And so like when I was making that decision, to me, by the time I made it, it was like 100% certainty because it was a few different things. Number one, Austin and Simmons would be a bigger target at merge than if I like stayed with Mike and someone else. Number two, me and Simmons would still be pretty quiet as a duo versus like me and Mike would be pegged as a duo later, most likely. Number three, I figured I'd get like a 2-for-1 vote for a while, even though it was Austin Simmons, like being a pair and maybe be on the outside of it. And then I was just like really prepared to bet on myself in that scenario that I could like break through those two's relationship. Not break through it. Sorry, that sounds like super rude, but I was pretty confident that I could convince Simmons that I was like a really strategic choice. And
right.
If not more than Austin, just as much as Austin. So for me, it became like a bit of a no-brainer not to move forward with Mike. And I think like when I really, really thought about it, and Mike talks about this in his exit interview, he was playing into the narrative of there's a boys alliance and they're like talking about you behind the scenes and they like don't think you're a great player, and he was doing that very intentionally, and to his credit it like very much worked. But when I was like making that decision, and I didn't know if it was true or not, it felt like if I was choosing to work with Mike, I would be choosing to work with Mike because I was scared to work with Simmons versus choosing to work with Simmons because I was confident that we could work together. And so I just didn't want to feel like I was making a choice out of fear. I wanted to feel like I was making one out of confidence. So that's why I think it's like probably a pretty low chance that I would have flipped and gone with Mike. And then as soon as I opened my mouth about that, felt, oh gosh, everything was gone and there was no chance of pulling that back.
Awesome. The next question is from Andrew Denson. Maddie, looking back on this journey and trusting that this is in fact your final game, what would you say was your proudest moment through both games? It was such a pleasure meeting you in this game, and thank you as always for keeping post-game as entertaining as you have. So the main question is like, what's your proudest moment in your DCP games?
I think it was the celebration me, Simmons, and Austin had before we went into mini day 2. There was just like something, it just felt so good and so true. And there was so much opportunity ahead of us. And there was so much dirt and grit and hard work behind us, but it felt like the moment where I really knew that we were going to do it. And it felt like everyone in the room knew that we were going to do it too, like the 3 of us. And it was just like pretty special to sit there and like to get there together, even though we still had rounds ahead of us. To me, that's like the one that really stands out.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, the next question is from one of your final 3 buddies, Austin Moorhead.
All right.
So his first one for you is, do you feel like any certain strategies fell your way due to having another survivor-holic in the family, being your brother John?
Any strategies fell my... What do you mean by strategies falling my way?
I guess he's trying to say, like, I guess maybe any of your gameplay influenced by being able to have like a sounding board in someone with so much survivor history as John, like just knowing so much about the game and you guys talking about Survivor in general gave you like any ideas or like any advantage, I guess, going into the game.
Well, I definitely knew his opinion on rocks. I'll tell you that.
Never.
You never go to rocks.
Never go to rocks. And I'm like, but what if? You never. We do talk about it a lot, but you know, we don't watch a lot of Survivor together. We watch a lot of the challenge together, and we talk a lot of strategy. So I think it gives you the same type of sounding board as if you have like a friend who loves Survivor and you just like pick things apart. We do like watch a lot of reality TV. But you know, like even in your game, you're never like, oh, I'm going to play like this thing that I saw one time and blah, 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 blah. You just like sense and check and feel what's right for you. And I do think like having watched like a fair amount of reality TV, Survivor or otherwise, allows you to play through a lot of like wild scenarios or like different things. Sometimes you can't imagine something happening until you've just seen it and you're like, oh, that was like a real thing that could happen. So we've talked a lot about that. And then, yeah, like at the top of the call, like more tactically, I think it gave some people some familiarity, and I wasn't I wasn't a total wild card. People had something to connect with me with through John, whether it be yeah, because he blindsided them really horribly, or whether it be because he played with them really, really closely, like he did with Zucker.
Right.
So it's like a degree of separation that can help. And yeah, I didn't, you know, and in all fairness, I didn't really know how John played the game either. And there's some like moments in the game where I say, oh, don't worry, I don't play like my brother. Which is so hilarious because I actually think we play really similarly. I think we play like very loyal games. I'm just a bit quieter. And
I was going to say that's a big difference.
Less outwardly assertive.
Well, there's this.
I feel like you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
There's this call with you and Simmons where he's just like, "Are you as good at puzzles as your brother is?"
Obviously not.
Well,
Yeah, you
and
just
I
have
was
to pull all the pieces out.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
like,
Well, and the other main difference is you're both very calculated, but when when something didn't go your way for both of you, one of you was able to have a very calm conversation, if not a little bit awkward, and the other one said, "You fucked us, Mackenzie." So you didn't do that to Simmons, and you kept Simmons as an ally, probably because you didn't explode on him. So like, kudos there. But Austin does have a second question.
Yes.
It's hard to answer this now with game ending with a bias, but if given the chance in the final four, if Zucker and I came to you with a plan to vote out Simmons, would you have went for it or try to campaign the original trio we planned for? See, Mika, that's why I was able to ask the Kylie one first.
It's that's a tricky one, right? Because and the reason why it's a tricky one is because I considered Austin locked in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't necessarily a world where I thought like if me and Zucker went to Austin, that would be an option. I I think I would think about it, but
but do you want to give fire making to someone?
I don't want to give fire making to anybody. Absolutely nobody. Nobody's going to get that story. And Simmons definitely can't get that story. Absolutely not. He's gonna be like,
I'd rather him just be at the end.
All he would do is come in and all he would have to say is, the only time you tried to get me, you couldn't get me. You missed your shot. I deserve to win. And then he wins. Like, it's just, it would be just another thing that he would get. And so I think it would have been like a really hard decision for sure. But I do, yeah. And maybe that's the way I convince Austin not to. I say, look, I'm not voting that way. If you vote that way, it's going to go to fire. And if he wins, he beats us for sure. Do we want a fair fight, or do we want him to just like landslide past us? Right. I think I would have tried that first and see the response on that, and then find out.
Cool. I'm glad that we're in the mindset about this Final Four possibility, because the next question is from, in fact, Michael Simmons.
Oh, nice.
And his first question is directly associated with this. And I will say his second question, we pretty much answered it. His second question was, what was your favorite specific moment from this game, if there was one specific moment? And we sort of touched on that conversation of you as a three. So we'll hit the main point. So, Maddie, I'm glad your game is getting the respect it deserves. You proved to be a hell of a player, and I'm glad I got to play this game with you. How do you think the votes shake out if you and Austin vote me out at Final Four and it's a Final Three of you, Austin, and Zucker?
Okay, so now we've got Austin and me, similar game, and now we've got Zucker, a really, really differentiated game.
And it's
with a lot of people mad at him.
But
that's right.
That's right. They're mad at him, but will they not vote for him is the thing.
And the piece of information that we're missing, and it's really important, as everybody knows, and I know as well, is how Zucker shows up in FTC. And I feel like that's like a massive missing piece. And, you watch his exit interview, like Zucker is incredibly intelligent, very well-spoken, very logical, very fact-based. And I think he would have come in and absolutely smashed it as well. And so I think that I could still differentiate my game from Austin's. I think it would be, I think the votes would be maybe a bit closer and between me and Zucker, but I'm not quite sure which way it would go. And I think it would be based on how well he could explain the intentionality behind his game, because I think that really would have won the respect of the jury, because they felt it as chaos, but he didn't do it with chaos in mind. And so if he can get over that barrier, I still think there's like a pretty interesting vote there. And potentially as well, like maybe Austin shows up differently in a world where we have the three of us and he tells a slightly different story, hearing my story, or maybe my story shifts a bit. And so I still think it's a fairly tight race, whichever way you swing it.
Gotcha. I love these answers. I love these hypotheticals. We got a ton of them with these final tribal the people who make final tribal council. But we got two little more fun questions to finish out the Facebook questions.
Not game. These ones weren't fun?
I mean, not game related. So okay. One of them is from Kyle Durrett, Duridium, okay. For those who know him. So for you, Maddie, he's asking, if you had to live in the U.S., what city would you live in?
I haven't traveled a lot in the US. The good news now is I have a whole bunch of friends in the US, which is very exciting. So hopefully that would help me make a decision later. But if I were to choose right now, I feel like I would end up somewhere in the mountains in Colorado, or maybe I do love the Pacific Northwest, so maybe in that region somewhere, but I feel like somewhere over there, most likely. That's not a city, I know.
Okay. And I also have a question from Carrie saying, Maddie, if you could merge two animals to make the ultimate animal, which two would you choose?
Okay. I don't think it would be very pretty. Okay. We're headed to Yukon on our motorcycle trip right now. And so I'm feeling like we need a half bison in there somewhere, because that's the animal I would like to see. Very strong. Very, very strong. I'm thinking the front end of the bison. So I'm trying to pick a back end. An animal booty.
Flamingo.
Probably not a flamingo.
Don't think it would carry the weight.
I just would love to see it. A mouse.
This is a terrible answer. I'm torn between whether it should have like more speed, like a cheetah, or whether we should give it wings so that it's like super versatile. I'm thinking we're gonna give it wings, like eagle wings.
So it's a beagle. American. A bison.
It's a beagle.
It's just Snoopy.
Yeah. But big enough wings that they could carry the bison.
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course. Yeah. Of course. All right.
Yeah.
And I lied, and there is another question that came in game related, and it's from Michael Zucker.
All right.
So for you, how exactly were you wanting to use my previous relationship playing the game with John to your advantage in this game?
And if I'm right, I said that he's referencing my confessional from one of the episodes. And if I'm right, I said that before him and I chatted that evening, before we went into mini day 2. So the one moment that Zucker and I had an opportunity to chat. So I knew they had worked closely in his game together. And I really, 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 really thought that it would open up conversation between us. And so going into that conversation with Zucker, I was like really thinking that I could get a sense on what he was thinking. And my perception was that he wasn't actually locked in to the Exile Boys, just based on knowing that he had put Simmons' name out there earlier in the day. So my plan going in was that I would get a little bit clearer understanding of like when he wanted to make his move and see me as a part of that, or at least an opportunity, so that if things went chaotic, which they did, but in our favor, but if they went chaotic and not in our favor, I really truly believe that like Zucker was probably an in for me until I had that conversation with him. And what I experienced in that conversation with him, it was so funny. We talked a really long time about no game, and then maybe we had like 6 minutes at the end of our call where we talked a little bit of game. But him and I were both doing like this dance around each other where we would like not really share anything and only share the obvious things about what would happen the next day. And so I was like, shoot, he is like way more locked into Exile Boys than I anticipated. And I actually think that I am an earlier target than maybe I thought I was if he is locked into that. So I kept it in the back of my mind that he was like open to voting Simmons. But it still didn't come until later in the day even. Like I thought maybe going into that call that he was like thinking it around X6, but he wasn't, because he was still locked into Karen and stuff at that point. So I was really hoping it would just open conversation for us. But it didn't, on both his side and both my side, which I thought was so funny. John also thought it was hilarious.
Well, that wraps up the Facebook questions, which means we have finally reached the end game. So the last 4 questions. Last 4 questions, right. And it's a wrap. So the first one is from me. It's Mr. Positivity. Yes. Tell me one positive thing you take away from your All-Stars experience.
The people, blah, blah, blah. Next
the people, blah, 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 the people.
Oh, yeah. That's the standard. That's the foundation. We know that. Needn't be said. I think, so being as someone who like really hasn't played a lot of these games, this is a very new experience to me. But when you come into this game, you like, it's a role-playing game, so you get to decide like what role you're going to play, and that looks really, really different for everybody. Some people like use it as an opportunity to try something on that they've like never been before. So like you try to be like way more manipulative or way more lying than you would ever do in your, you know, in your normal life. But then on the other side of the spectrum from that is like you come in as like your whole self. And I feel like that's what I like very much did in this game. I played the game with like very, very, very honestly, and I played the game like really, really loyally. And that's like how I do life, and it's how I just decided, but also naturally play the game. And so I think like when you decide between those two ends of the spectrum of what you're going to come in and what your role is going to be in the game, what happens is you like, if you do the one where you're yourself, the real big downside is everything you feel in the game is really personal, and it hurts and it's hard and it's painful. But the upside, if it goes well, is that you like get to the end of the game in my case, and you're like, all I had to do was show up like as I am, as the best parts of me as a human. And that was like enough. And like whether you come like first, second, third, wherever you make it, you know, like no one can like take that piece away from you. Is that like, oh, that was just me. And like I played the game as proud as I could have, and also come out with all the friends on the other side of it. And so it's like a big, big boost. And like I was on like cloud 9 when I finished this game. It was like Oh, I can't even explain it. It was just so amazing.
Awesome. Now
Love
I'll
that.
move into Ian's questions. So we're taking Danny, throwing him out of the game. Who are you replacing with?
From
And
your
no
season.
pressure to say Kylie, but if you do say Kylie, I will ask for another answer. And if you say Eric,
All right.
I will
Well,
ask for another answer. So
no. So I was okay. I actually truly, Kylie, I was originally going to say you because I know you wanted to work with me in my game, and I feel like I could use that to my advantage. But I feel like you're so social and so charismatic that I would have to cut you. Like, there's no way, there's no world in which I don't cut you towards the end, for sure. No, I would. No, McKenna, my actual choice is Eric. I choose Eric.
But he
and
can't
you can't
play.
take him away from me. Nope, you can't. You can't take him away from me. Eric's plan, and the reason being is that he's like softer, quieter. I feel like that's like a person I can really work with. Super smart, great at advantages, which we know I need help on. So I would choose Eric for sure.
All right. Well, now Kylie went from loving you to hating you because she'll hate you for Eric. But
I would say Eric. It's a good choice.
alrighty, and now it's your DCP Mount Rushmore, 4 people who you think are like the greatest of the greats. Now that we've seen all of All
I was gonna
Star,
say.
we can include their All-Star games. So
All right.
this can include yourself.
I'm not including myself.
All right.
I want to put other people up there. Okay, so I am Canadian, so I had to do a little bit of research on Mount Rushmore. Okay, because I don't really know that much about it. So, I've like linked it to the prezes that are on Mount Rushmore. So I had to write this down. Okay, so in the place of George Washington, first president, laid the foundation for the states there. I'm going to, and the other caveat is that it's only All Stars for me. I just don't have enough knowledge like outside of that to make a good assessment. I'm going to put Jeremy Urban. Right. He played in Yasawa, did a kick-ass close second, founding member of DCP, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a founding father. So that's my first one. Okay. Thomas Jefferson. Okay, author of Declaration of Independence, which inspired democracies and how they'd run them around the world. So I'm going to pick up the inspiration piece, and I'm going to say Ashley, because I believe that the way that she decided to show up in this game as her true authentic self will inspire others to follow suit. My next one is Theodore Roosevelt, who I learned negotiated the construction of the Panama Canal, connecting East and West. To me, that's got real Andrew Denson vibes post-merge. So Andrew's going to hit my Mount Rushmore, flowing the info from old FUMO to new FUMO, sorry. And also, he was like so integral to the game. And I just like really respect Andrew's game. And my honest Abe, who held the nation together through the Civil War. So I hold him as like gluing people together. I'm going to put that as Simmons because there's no way Simmons not on my Mount Rushmore. And yeah, felt like the glue in the game, which is of course why he won.
All right.
Good answers.
Kylie, do you know Lily's final question?
Yes. Well, is it one word?
Yes.
Yeah,
all right, go for it, Kylie.
All right. My game in one word is conviction. Played the way I wanted to play, the person I wanted to be, and made it to the end with the people I wanted to go to the end with.
I love that.
All right. Well, thank you, Maddie, for sitting through this, and you viewers who have sat through Maddie's exit interview. I was entertained for this long amount of time, but it was great deep diving your game. We had a lot to get through. So stay tuned. We still got a little bit more content coming. We have the Almighty Simmons exit interview next. So stay tuned for that and some other post season content that we have coming your way. So thank you, everyone, and see you next time.